We're back. Republicans don't need much of a reason to bring up Benghazi, which is why conservatives are buzzing after a story airing last night on CBS's 60 Minutes. While it didn't contain any new bombshells, it did raise a very real and important question. For an attack that lasted more than 7 hours, why didn't reinforcements arrive in time? In that 60 Minutes report, reporter Laura Logan interviewed Gregory Hicks, the #2 diplomat in Libya, who was based in nearby Tripoli. And this is Hicks recalling the moment he realized that help wasn't on its way.
You have this conversation with the defense attaché. You ask him what military assets are on their way, and he says,
effectively, they're not. And for a moment, I just felt lost. I just couldn't believe the answer. And then I made the call to the NX chief. I told him, listen, you've got to tell those guys there may not be any help coming.
Brandon Webb is a former U.S. Navy SEAL and author of Benghazi, The Definitive Report, and Jay Newton Small is a reporter with Time magazine. Let me go to Brandon first. I guess this is the question that gets to me. If you're out there pinned down and the word gets back to Washington in real time at the National Security Agency, or rather National Security Desk, why didn't we try to send somebody from somewhere? What happened?
Hi, Chris. I think what people need to understand is this is a situation where as much as the people on the ground working with the State Department in Libya knew that the threat was there and had requested the security, the State Department just wasn't prepared to deal with this situation. And by being prepared, you have a list of things that when something goes wrong like this, you go down that list and you make certain phone calls and notify certain people. And that just wasn't the case. They had numbers from the DOD that had expired. Then you run into a situation where these agencies, the CIA, the State Department, and the military don't necessarily talk to each other and are in communications as much as you'd think. Especially,
well, as an American, that doesn't work for me. The president's, the National Security Agency people are sitting in the White House 24/7. There's officers on deck. They're getting an instantaneous report on what's happening there. What were they looking at in terms of assets that could have been sent? Where was the U.S. Cavalry, to use an American image? Where were the people that could have come or tried to get there within how many hours it took to save the lives of the people still living? Where were they, and why weren't they called to do it? I'm going to ask that question until I get an answer.
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, there's some blame on the Secretary of Defense. Our sources say that Obama, before he left on that campaign trip, told Panetta, you do everything you can to save those people. So I think a lot of people in the military are wondering that we're standing by, ready to go. Why wasn't the call sent down to send those folks in? But a lot of people need to understand, when you add the CIA and the heroes that went on their own, took their own initiative.
That's what I'm impressed by. Then we hear about the guys who went in there, got on their uniform, grabbed their weapons, got on a plane, and they were stopped en route. I mean, that's unbelievable. People who were like a volunteer fire department racing to save their colleagues, and what happened then to them?
Well, I think that, the two heroes of the day are Glenn Doherty and Ty Woods, the two Navy SEAL CIA contractors that were taking the initiative that day, along with the JSOC, with the Joint Special Operations Command troops that were on the ground, that noticed, having worked in that military system, noticing that help isn't on the way, and took their own initiative to go in there and rescue these folks. And, largely, most of the Americans in Benghazi were evacuated, and, relatively few lives were lost, other than, the ambassador, Sean Smith, and the two Navy SEALs.
Let me ask you, Jay Newton Small, about this politics of this thing. I know it's a hot opportunity for the Republicans, but my interest here is on the facts. And my facts question I have about this are, what was the State Department's role in real time, not beforehand, but at the time of the attack, in defending the lives of their people, especially the U.S. ambassador, who's a friend of the Secretary of State's, Hillary Clinton? What was their actions and what was the tick-tock? What did they do when they got the warning of the attack?
Well, I mean, Hillary in her testimony before Congress said that she was there, she was, on the ground, in the State Department, listening to the response in real time on the phone as it was happening, and so she knew what was happening. But again, they also testified that there were waves of attacks. So they thought that, after the first wave that things were quieting down. That's when they said, well, maybe we don't need to send help. And help was really far away. It wasn't like it was next door. It was several hours away in Italy.
But the fight went on for 7 hours.
Yeah, but then if you're doing it in waves, you think the wave is the attack is over and sending somebody is not going to help anymore, right?
Would that
and then
be
all
good?
Of a sudden they attack again.
Let me ask you something. If that was your brother or your father in there, would you say that was an acceptable response? Oh, it's probably over by now. It's no good to send anybody. Or would you say, absolutely. I don't care if it's over or not. I'm going to go in and collect the bodies if nothing else. I'm going to get there and show I cared.
No,
that's
absolutely.
what I do.
And these are questions that Hillary's going to have to answer if and
the president and the national security advisor,
you know?
all the people sitting in that sit room. We had lots of coverage of people when we killed bin Laden. We had a lot of coverage of that. There's a lot of photographers around during that. How come this is shrouded in mystery? What I can't understand is why all these months later, we're still trying to figure out what happened. I just want to know, as an American, what happened? Did everybody do what they're supposed to do? Did everybody make a really good, desperate effort to save the lives of our people over there? Or didn't they? And if they didn't, that's a problem. But I want an answer.
I think the biggest problem, Chris, is the State Department's own security environment threat list lists Benghazi and Tripoli as in the top 10 of the most dangerous facilities the State Department has worldwide. And a lot of people don't realize Tripoli was evacuated to the CIA. The embassy in Tripoli was evacuated to the CIA compound, too, because they didn't have adequate security. So a lot of blame, I think, falls on the State Department for just not being prepared to deal with the response and communicate effectively to the military to get help. They really left their people hanging. And I see that Patrick Kennedy.
Jay, are the Republicans doing this right? I mean, a broken clock can be right twice a day. I'm not a big fan of Darrell Issa because I think he's out for publicity most of the time. But is it possible that we can hope that the Republicans and the Democrats on the committees, when they do look at this, will focus intently on the reasonable questions? Like, did we do as much as we could at the time? That's, to me, the most important.
Think these are questions that Hillary is absolutely going to have to put to rest and answer if she's ever going to run for president in 2016. It's a huge sort of black mark on her. She's going to have to, I mean, really answer to say what was she doing? Why wasn't, help given? And when you look at term as Secretary of State, or Obama's first term when she was his Secretary of State, what were the achievements that she had? I mean, she normalized relations with Burma, but
I'll set up for this one right now. I just care about what happened that night because I think that Lindsey Graham's onto something here, and I know he has to cover his rear end in terms of the right wing in that primary challenge, but sometimes politics does coincide with reasonable government. Anyway, thank you, Brendan Webb, and thank you, Jay Newton-Swan. By the way, thank you for your service.
Thank you,
Mr. Webb. We'll be right back after this.